Good morning, everyone out there in YouTube land. My name is Jared, and this is my channel, Mazda B3K. In this video, it's going to be a general guide on grounds and wiring. I'm pretty sure I've got some electrical gremlins I need to sort that are indirectly impacting my transmission, so I'm going to go ahead and work on that today. Without further ado, let's get started. As I've pointed out in other videos, the electrical system on this truck is not the greatest. Like, we've got crusties there. This ground is all sorts of messed up. All sorts of stuff like that. But I just talked about it and I haven't really done anything about it. And that's what's happening in this video. I'm going to be checking for bad grounds via voltage drop and resistance checks. And then I'm also going to be investigating why my turn signals and flashers aren't doing what they're supposed to do. And this is what I mean by that. Well, once I get the key, I'll show you what I mean by that. Okay, check this out. So the turn signal works. See, we have flashing up front. We have flashing in the back. But it's flashing way too fast. Both turn signals do that, and also the hazards are kind of doing the same thing. And generally, when you see a flash that quick, that means you have a bulb burned out. But I don't. All of these are working, but flashing way, way, way too quick. So I'm going to try to figure out what's going on, and to that end, we're going to have to inspect the bulbs, the wiring, the grounds, all that good stuff. But first, what we're going to do is we're going to go investigate the engine bay, and we're going to do some basic testing to see if any of our grounds are not doing what they are supposed to do, namely through voltage testing and resistance testing. Another thing you can do is you can do resistance. That's interesting. This should be a complete path. Shouldn't be getting that's weird. Got a piece of steel here. Yeah, there we go. Yeah. Come on, behave. So we get 13 ohms. That's not great. So what I'm doing here is I've got one end on the battery ground, which is going to be like your main back to earth ground. And then what you can do is take your other probe and attach it to, or not attach, but touch any piece of non-painted or treated iron or steel and see what your ohm reading is. You want it as close to 0 as possible. So 13.6 is not great. It means there's some resistance on that path, which means that probably the grounds that service this path are not great. Now, what I'm touching one of the hood hinges, so it's not exactly a great testing spot. So this is the accessory bracket for the power steering pump. Better, still not as good as I want. This is the AC compressor. Oh my, it's all over the place. I can't wedge it in somewhere. I need to change to my other. Yeah. I need to find my other tips and change to those for this test, because it's just not, these back probe tips are not great. And then this is the housing over the injection pump. That's not good. This is some casting on the block. So again, higher than I'd like, but not insane. So you can kind of feel around the block and accessories. Like here's the alternator. Now understand that even a light amount of corrosion on the metal will keep you from getting a good reading. So you may need to take a wire wheel or something to scuff up a spot before you do your testing, which is what I really need to do over there. Anyway, as you can see, the grounds aren't horrible, but nor are they great. And you got some work to do. So I'm gonna get my tools out and I'm gonna show you, try to get you down and take a look and see, so we can start cleaning these up. And I'm praying and hoping that this cleans up the transmission. All right, see this really oily, manky looking bolt right there? That is our battery ground, and it's probably okay. We need to look under that bolt to see. I mean, I can still see copper on the lug, so maybe, but you can also see it's very exposed, or you may not be able to see. Hang on. Let's try out the zoom thingy mabobber. There we go. See that? See all that exposed copper? That's not good. Really, I need to rerun this, but what I'll do for now is I'm going to get this cleaned up and I'll put some liquid tape over it. That's just a temporary measure, but eventually I need to basically rip out every wire on this truck and redo it, because that's junk. But I'm going to clean this with some brake cleaner. Brake cleaner is excellent for cutting grease, and that's just a wee bit greasy, because like all 7.3s, this truck has been leaking oil from just about every orifice. This was probably courtesy of the power steering pump, which I have replaced, so it's not leaking anymore. But yeah, let's get this cleaned up, get it off, and then see if we can get some repairs done on it. Okay, here we be. So the ground itself looks all right, like the lug, the copper lug looks fine. It needs to be cleaned, otherwise it's okay. But what we need to address is here, and we want to clean up where it was on the block, get all this cleaned up, maybe score that up a little bit and then reattach. I'm going to clean this cable all the way through because it's just got garbage all through here. So oil leaks, yay. Alrighty, here we go. After getting things cleaned up, looks much better. I didn't get all the garbage out of there, but I got quite a bit. So this, like I said, I'll hit this with some liquid tape to close that up. I'm going to wire wheel the back of this so I can get a little bit of a cleaner connection. I also went ahead and I got it over here. Cleaned up this bolt. Just got garbage off it. Wish I'd get the threads a little cleaner, but I need a thread cleaner, which I do not have. But I'll probably use a wire wheel, see if I can't get that garbage out. And then the last thing I'll need to do is go to where it was on the block down there and hit that with some brake clean and get that cleaned out. And then we'll put it all back together. Now, what I find interesting here is we have this job here. I'm gonna guess this is custom. That's heat shrink, so they did that side right, and actually this side was done right. If the camera will behave, there we go. But I'm curious as to why that was done that way. And then hiding here is a ground. So we will take a look at that as well. I'm going to do a couple of these, and then pretty much I'm only going to put in little segments saying, hey, there's a ground here, hey, there's a ground there. Because it's going to be a lot of the same thing. It's going to be remove it, clean it, shine it up, reinstall it, test it. Ugh, these cables so bad. I mean, I've seen worse, but anywho's, that's what we're up to at the moment. Okay, we have now glued it. This is what's called liquid electrical tape. You can get it as a spray. You can also get it more as a paste, which is what this one is. It's this stuff here. You put on a couple of coats. Once it dries up, it functions kind of like electrical tape. It will provide insulation. It will keep corrosion out. It's pretty good stuff. If this had looked really gross, what I would have wound up doing is cutting and re-terminating. Though I actually don't know if I have anything big enough to cut a wire this thick, but I do have the appropriate tools to lugs and tools to do this. And on some of these, that's what I'm going to do. Like this poor misbegotten thing here, it's just going to be cut and re-terminated. So, and then on some of these hot wires too, like this guy here, that's what I'm going to do. Because this one's smaller, I can definitely cut it, and yeah. And then over here, this is going to need to be liquid taped because they stuck the wire out too far. There's just so many little things I need to do. So anyway, this is going to need to dry, so I'm going to get the wire wheel out, start trying to clean some stuff up, and then I'll bring you back after I do the reinstall, and we can see if we can actually do some voltage drop testing and some resistance. Alrighty folks, this is kind of what we look like once we're done cleaning up. So top looks okay. This is how the liquid tape's been drying. I made sure to get all the way around it, and I cleaned up the bottom a bit. Copper got a shine to it again. I checked the continuity on this cable, which means that basically I put a probe on this end and a probe on this end to check resistance to make sure there wasn't something broken internally or heavily corroded. Came out to 0.1 ohms, so that's good. This cable is fine, so we don't need to worry about replacing it. So I'm going to go ahead, put that back on, and this is going to be upside down, but I cleaned that up as well. It's a little crusty. That red you see is some battery protectant spray that I have laying around. Kind of an anti-rust. I don't know exactly how well it works, but that's what we're doing today. I'm going to go ahead and feed this back in, and then guess I could do a continuity check on this power run as well, because this actually, it shoots across the front here, comes out right here, so I can at least check continuity between those 2 points, make sure they're okay, and then it continues on down. I believe it gets bolted into the starter, and I know it's good on that end because I had to replace the starter on this truck, so we're good there. But you know, we can check out this guy, right? We can do some basic tests with no power on the vehicle. You know, be mindful, you still got a battery with plenty of juice in here. So, yeah, we're just gonna do a bunch of stuff. Like there's a ton of fusible links and stuff lurking over here I'd like to get a closer look at. And just all sorts of little things like that. Like I think there's another ground hiding over here somewhere. Yep, there it is. It's under that lip. Just gonna keep chewing through it. I also did clean up on the block where this is gonna go, which basically involved a bunch of brake cleaner and just getting the garbage off of it to get down to good iron again. I'll just go ahead and put this back in. All right, so here's the one that was going to the battery. Please ignore the rain, it's tin roof. This is just really bad. I actually did a continuity check on this and it's still pretty good, but I don't like that. So I am gonna cut right here. On both sides, because both sides are pretty janky. And I've got the slop and the slack, so I'm just gonna go ahead and cut these off and then re-terminate. Like so. Are. All right, so I'm going to try to use my auto wire stripper here. I don't know if it's going to get the job done. We're about to find out. it may choke on this wire. It could be just too big. Yeah, I think we're gonna choke. Let's see here. Slide that out a bit. Oh, looky there. How about that? Learn something new every day. That actually did a pretty decent job. So next step, I got to go pick an appropriate lug. So we know at one end we need kind of a larger size lug as far as what's going through it. That's for the battery terminal. And you see it's stamped with a 6. That's the lug size. And then this one is stamped also with a 6. So it's number 6 lug, but the hole is smaller. Now I happen to have, if I can find it, I have a kit. It's probably in the truck. Let me go get it. So here is our kit. Also has some heat shrink sleeves, so like if you're making battery terminals or whatnot, you can coat it. I'm probably going to be getting into the blacks, so I want to heat shrink these connections if I can. But we're going to dig into here. We're going to get the appropriate lug with the correct diameters, and then we're going to do crimpy stuff with a big crimper. So this is what I've come up with. This is an 8, but it will fit around on the battery terminal end. So the thing you got to remember is before you go to do your crimp and all that, and this looks like it'll fit pretty well, if you're going to do a shrink sleeve, you need to go ahead and slide it on. Now the other end is still, nothing's there, so I'll slide it on from the back. Just something to keep in mind. Go ahead and put that in there like this. Come on, behave. The natives are getting restless. Alright, so I'll leave that like that. Zoom out a bit here. This is my crimper. This is a hydraulic. It's supposedly a one-handed crimper. I have to disagree. It has various dies that you lock into it to get the correct crimp. This is 12 American Wild 12 gauge American wire gauge. I think this is a 12. I am not sure. We're going for it. So we shall see how it crimps. So one thing I found from using this is if you get it, kind of start it until there's not a whole lot of room left. And then when you go to put a crimp on it, dadgummit, I don't have enough hands. You can kind of slip it in. All right, now this is a hydraulic crimper, so watch your fingers. All right, dive, dive, dive. So you pump this until it gets hard to pump, basically. All right, I think I have murdered it. So then on this guy, you turn this wheel here to reset, and it lets go. So that is ugly as sin, but it's mechanically sound. It is not going anywhere, which is kind of what I need. So this will work. So this is the basic idea of what we're going to do. As you can see, I'm terrible at it, but this is the rough idea. You don't want to overdo this because you actually will, like this one, because it's not solid. As you can see, I actually I cracked that right there. So probably a little less crimp. Maybe I don't know. So this is what we're going with. This should work. I'll keep an eye on it. Alright, let's go ahead and check continuity on our newly made cable here. See if I can actually make cables. And we're coming back with, if I don't try to test plastic, it's like 0.2 ohms. Works for me. And that's me fiddling with the contact. Yep, alright, quick. There we go, yeah, 0.2. So, good cable. Go ahead and put it back on. Good afternoon, everyone. Today is a new day. So this is the primary ground strap from the battery to the block on the passenger side of the vehicle. This is a frame ground that comes off of it. I believe this is all factory. And it goes to a spot on the frame which you're not going to be able to see from up here. Unfortunately, it's kind of buried in there, but it's a 10mm bolt, which I have right there. And this is the stud. That's pretty gross, but this is the stud that holds in that block ground. And there's a nut that's in front of it, so something else went there at some point in time, but on mine at least, that's gone. So I'm going to clean that up. I've already cleaned these connections up, and as you can see, I'm putting some liquid tape over everything. And once that dries up, I'm going to slide on some of the shrink wrap that I showed earlier and get that taken care of. So while this is curing and everything, I'm going to take a stroll on back towards the firewall. And you see we have a ground strap for the hood. That's going to be for your courtesy light that is over there on the driver's side. Mine's blown out, and I've left it blown out because I knew I'd be doing a bunch of work and I didn't want another light drawing power. But we're going to clean this up, and then we're going to mosey our way over, and we're going to tackle this ground here, which is against the firewall driver's side. And I'm pretty sure this is the ground for the computer, which, as I've mentioned before, in this vehicle, this is pretty much explicitly, this computer is for the transmission. The big old diesel 7.3 don't much care about computer control. It just does its thing mechanically. So we're going to work on that. And I see this ground is probably primarily for the wipers. We got a ground right there that we can work on. And we're just gonna make our way around the engine bay, hit every ground we can there, and then we're gonna move back. We're gonna go into the cab because there's gonna be grounds in there that we need to hit, and slowly work our way towards the back because there's a unholy wiring nightmare back there I gotta fix at the tail lights, and I'll show you that when we get there. So this is the screw that was for the computer ground, and it's a little bit scuzzy, and there's also this, I'm not sure what this plate does, but it was plugged into this plate, and then the actual ground wire lug isn't that great either. So I'm gonna get all this cleaned up. If you don't have a bench grinder, which I do have, but I don't have it set up yet, you can just take screw gun, wire wheel, and a vise. Let's hit it. Now don't do that. Don't send your screw into orbit, but as you can see where I've already started to clean that up. So that's what I'm doing over here. It turns out this is a 1/4, by the way. Get this out if this is the factory screw. So let me get this cleaned up and I'll show you the results. So there's our end result. I'm not sure what that little metal thing is. It's possibly a bracket for the cruise control, not 100%. But that's all cleaned up now, so we're gonna move our attentions over to that guy right there, which, like I said, should be for the wiper motor. Alrighty, here is the ground screw and nut for the wipers. You can see it's all rusted up. The setup up here is a little weird. The outermost nut is a 7/16, and the innermost, the one on the stud itself, is a 10mm. So the 10mm strikes again. So obviously this has got to be cleaned up. I'll get that nice and clean, and we'll get that ground cleaned up. As I've been working on this, I have been continuing to glob and patch up all that exposed cable that was there, rotating it around, letting it dry, hit it again. So that's almost done, and once that's done, I'll do the shrink sleeves to clean that up, and then I can reconnect that guy. As a reminder, it's a little tricky to see, but where you see the, see if I can't wiggle it, you see this line right here, right where my fingers are. A little bit below that on the block is where this bolts in. That big ground right there. In fact, my finger's right at the hole right there. Just let me zoom in. That's not zooming in. There we go. Yep, you can see it now right there. Anyway, I'll get back to this in a bit. So I got a list all of our grounds. Some of these are not going to apply because it's a diesel, and some of these will apply specifically because it's a diesel. So I'm going to just kind of go through this and knock off stuff that we've already worked on, and we'll just keep going down the line until we have located and cleaned up all the grounds. So the next ground we're going after is here. This is on the, I'm going to call it the right hand inner fender. Right hand being that this is going to be the passenger side. You know, if you're seated inside the cab, it'd be right hand. So we'll just call it passenger side. That'll be the next one we go after. I'm waiting on some stuff to dry before I wrap up the one that I was working on at the firewall. And still, I had to wait for some stuff to dry right up in here before I put this big guy back on. This, if you remember, is it's actually the negative on the battery. It goes down to the front of the engine on the passenger side. Next ground we're going after, it goes into this sheet metal here. Oh shoot, didn't touch that. It's out of the way. There it is. So you can see it's right by the voltage regulator. So that's our next one, probably an 8mm. And this is why I didn't want to touch that. I just gooped myself. And that was an 8mm as well. Give you a from the ground view of where this other big ground strap goes. And as you can see, it goes right there. There's a hole above it, but it's smaller. and you want to put it back where you see a witness mark of where the ground went. So I'm gonna go ahead and put that back in now that it's all dry. Good evening, everyone. Today is a new day. This is the other end of the ground that I kept saying was for the wiper motor. It's not. This is actually attached to the back of the driver's cylinder head. So this is an engine to frame ground is what this is. So it's kind of important. This end of it's not bad. I mean, I'm going to clean it up. But the wire itself is probably the least damaged wire I've come across so far of all the ground wires. So I'm going to take care of that. There's also, see if I can get visibility on it here. Right there. There's a glow plug relay ground right here. That looks pretty new, and I suspect it is because this relay got replaced not much before I bought this truck. So I'm okay with this one. I'm not gonna mess with it unless the other end of the wire is all messed up or something, which I don't think it is. I'm tracing it with my fingers. I know you guys can't see it, but it loops back around behind the relay somewhere. There's the wire. I think we're okay. Oh, it is a 9/16 bolt back there. Here's the bolt. Looks all right. And it was on there tight. So I'm suspecting no one has serviced that since this thing left the factory, or at least since that engine was installed. I suspect that's a remanufactured 7.3. That's my guess. Anyway, I'm going to clean this up. I'm going to put that back on. And after that, I mean, there's supposed to be some other grounds around the injection pump and over by the fuel and water separator. I can't find them. And I've looked. And looked and looked. I found a cap for the Schrader valve, which that was cool. But you know, this very loose thing here, that is a sensor. And really I need to figure out how to make that tighter, but that's a sensor, and then that is a sensor. You know, I don't see it unless they're referring to this ground on the alternator. So I'm going to work on that and that. And then we are, unless I can find something else, we're done with the engine bay as far as grounds go. There are some, oh, I forgot. There actually is one other ground. There's a little tiny ground hiding right there. Do those, and then we're going to start moving our way back into the cabin and take a look at the grounds there. Here's a better view of the alternator ground. That turned out to be a 5/16 nut. And then here's the actual, you know, there was a Mahoozer. That's not the cleanest I've seen, but it should work. So let me get that cleaned up, and then I'll take care of the courtesy light ground. So while I was poking around up here, I saw that, I'm going to guess this is mouse damage. I mean, this is the original connector, and it's not great, but if you're looking close there, you can see there's some skins on the wire in a couple of places. So I'm going to repair that damage, plug this guy back in. And then I also took a look at the positive terminal over here, and it's not looking that great either. So I'm going to address that as well while I'm here. This truck needed some electrical love. Mechanically, it runs really well, but electrically, it needs some help. Alrighty, so it goes right there. It's a 9/32 on the bolt. Yeah, looks alright, but I'll go ahead and clean it up, put it all back together. To get it out, you're going to want to pop this connector out of the way. So use a trim tool, just pop it up and out of this hole. And if you're wondering what the heck this is all about, what I think this is, and I haven't verified it yet, is I think this connector is the mechanism that controls the courtesy light coming on and off, I think is how this works. So when I initially saw this, there was a, just as a quick aside here, there was a ball inside of this. And I think how this works is like a float sensor on a septic tank when you have to use a sewage pump or something like that. So when the hood is down, the ball rolls forward, circuit doesn't close. But when the hood is up, the ball rolls back, it completes the circuit, which then turns on the light. I think is how that works. I could be completely wrong, but that's just kind of how I read it. And mine is busted. I need to replace it. See if I'm right or not, but get this cleaned up. And there you go. So let's mosey on over how we're looking over here. And we've got the positive is cleaned up. I cleaned up its terminal best I can. I've been just giving this a little bit of time to dry, basically. Got this liquid tape. It actually works really well. You just gotta be patient, give it some time to skin over before you put it back in. And according to the instructions, you are not supposed to run electricity through it for, like half a day or something like that, which is not a problem. As you can see, we're missing a couple of key components to do that. So I can go ahead and get this boat back together. You know what? I think I may skip the cabin. I'm going to go to where I think the problem is, actually, and I'll show you that as kind of a sneak peek to the work I'll be doing tomorrow. I'm having to do this during the week on my lunch break and after work. So, good morning, everyone. Today is a new day. You see all this mess? This is what I think my problem is. Somebody wired this up for dual 7 pins. There's one in the bed and there's one coming off the hitch here. And it was not done correctly. So there is stuff going everywhere. So what I intend to do is to try to sort this mess out, get all the 7-pin wiring back out, restore the original factory wiring, and then see what that does with the flashing light issues I've got and possibly the transmission electronics issues I have. Like, for example, this guy, I believe, is power for the 7-pin, because if you follow that goes up to here, which is the 7-pin in the bed, and that's got to come out. And there's another 7-pin right here, and that's got to get sorted out. And then here is your taillight wiring for the license plate lights. And then, of course, there are a bunch of, and you can see one kind of, let's see if I can get you to it. Not the 7-pin up there, but there's a little, I'm not in the right angle, hang on. Yeah, see that right there, that connector? That's for a marker light. This guy here. And so there's a bunch of wiring for that needs to be sorted. And I have discovered, I think there are 2 factory grounds. One is here. The other one is kind of hidden around on the other side of this. It's going to be a little hard to get to, but I'll show you that when we get there. So these grounds need to be cleaned up, and I'm going to get all this wiring off of it. Get us back to factory wiring, and then see where we stand. All right, folks. This is not, well, you don't really see the other side of this, but this was all Scotch locked in. And then somebody cut a connector off and started wiring this stuff indirectly. This is not how you do this, folks. I don't know if this is a stock bumper or a custom bumper, but it had a 7/16 nut and a 7/16 bolt holding it in. Here's the other side of that. It's a mess. I think this is trailer wiring. I think. It goes into two connectors that are located, you can see them right there. And you can see that's where the 7-pin was for the bed had been tapped in. So I think this is all trailer wiring. I think I can just remove it for now and then repair the damage that was done to the license plate lights. Like this is, I'm pretty sure, the ground for the license plate lights. I got to go do some research and verify that. All right, I did some research and I found that all of the marker lights, which are these little dudes that run around the side, the reverse lights, the tail lights, these three, which apparently are factory from Ford, all the way around to here, all of these get spliced into one connector to one ground. There's a connector called Charlie 197, and there's a ground called Golf 1006. I'll show you where those are. And apparently that's all you need for your actual lights, which means this guy, indeed, I think it's connector 1005, is a trailer harness, which I can remove safely. I'll tape over the other side of the connector so junk doesn't get in it, so hopefully I can reuse this whenever I go back to properly setting up a 7-pin and whatnot. All right, guys, check this out. See where my finger is? That's our ground. And we need to take it up, clean it, put it back together. This is what grounds all those lights in the back, so let's go ahead and work on that. Okay, guys, so what I did, I didn't disconnect connector 197. Instead, I was just able to pull stuff back after I took the ground out. That turned out to be a one size up from 1/4. I can't remember what that is. It's 9/32, I think. Here's your ground. It's okay. I'm gonna clean it up and then I'll shove it back through the hole so that it can be grounded in. Honestly though, now that I think about it, if the threading lets me, I may just ground it from this side. It's a lot easier for me to get to. Other thing I'm gonna do is I am going to disconnect this. This feeds these three tail lights, I guess. I'm not sure exactly what you call them. This fella here is the remnants of one of the lights, and with that all jacked up, and it looks like it's made, I need to replace the whole assembly, and I don't want this to interfere with electrical, so I'm just going to disconnect it. I'll leave it plugged in or screwed in, but I'll disconnect this, and we'll just keep on trucking, try to eliminate anything that would be electrically weird so that this transmission behaves appropriately. All right, folks, this is what we wound up having. I moved the ground over here so it's easier to work on. And then you've got your trailer connectors here. There's a third connector. Shove it this way so you can see it. This hasn't been used in a while. It's a 2-wire. I suspect it had something to do with the side marker lights and the tag lights, because what I just wound up having to do to get the tag lights working is there's this wire here. It's on the same circuit as the outside marker lights in the back and the chicken chasers on the roof, and it's a hot wire, and I spliced it in to tag lights. Now the tag lights, they ground themselves to their frame, so if you pull the light switch now, I've got my tag lights back, all the other lights work, the hazards work, the turn signals work better than they did before. There's some electrical that came back alive in the cab. So straightening all this mess out definitely helped. This right here are those these guys here. What's interesting is when you plug them in, it kills the tag light. You leave it unplugged it works. So I'm not sure what's going on. I'm missing a piece of the puzzle. It probably involves this connector. I may go to the junkyard and see if I can't just find some wiring that I can splice in, clean this mess up. But I'm at the point where I got all that junk out and all the lights I need to be legal work. I would like to have the bed cab lights, you know, side markers working, but I'll take what I can get. So let me show you what happens when you pull the switch. So you pull the switch, chicken chasers on the roof light up. Now these were working, and obviously they are not working anymore. Trying to figure that out. But this is back to where it was. This one works. I think this one has a bad bulb, but that's back to working. And I'm not popping any fuses, and all the other main lights work. I don't need these to be legal. They're nice, I like them, but I don't need them to be legal, so they will sit for now. Unfortunately, I also ran another key on engine off test, which is you hook up to this OBD1 port right here. I ran the test. I got the exact same codes that I got before. Never seen a tester. The one for Ford looks like this, or this is an example of one. So I'm not sure what's going on there. There is one ground strap that I have not attended to under the vehicle. I'll show you where that is. It's right there. That's the only other ground I found. That's a frame to, you know, cab ground. Otherwise, I don't know. Thinking that I'm gonna crank it, let it run, and then turn it off, run a test again, because right now it's acting like there is zero, and I mean zero, communication to the transmission. The computer can't talk to it. That's how it's acting. But I doubt that. It just does not make sense to me. So I'm going to keep poking away at it, but that kind of ends after I clean up that frame ground over there that I just showed you. That's going to end part one. This particular video, it was all about finding the major grounds that could potentially impact things like your transmission, and I think I've pointed all those out. Part two can be cab grounds, and then digging in really hard at all the wiring related to the transmission, so that I can see if something has rubbed raw, or I have a broken wire, or there's mouse damage, something like that. All it comes in is right there. I need to look at that thoroughly, see if there's any damage there. So that's going to wrap up this video.